When I Fall by Scarlet Emerald 32. Chapter 25.
So what's your deal anyway, if you don't mind me asking?
Justin looked over at Talisa and handed her a canteen of water that she took gratefully. Jerry gave him a shove.
Dude, rude. You met her like 2 minutes ago.
I know, which is why I'm trying to get to know her better.
Yeah, but you don't just go around asking people what their deal is. Have a little tact.
It's cool, Jerry.
Talisa said with a smirk before turning back to Justin.
My deal is that my boyfriend defected to the Saviors, and I decided I needed a little bit of time and space from it all. Ezekiel was nice enough to let me take a beat with you guys.
Damn, that's rough.
Yep. Gotta say, getting to take a bunch of them down en masse is some damn effective therapy, though.
Yeah, I bet. And on that note...
He picked up his rifle and stood up. Talisa and Jerry followed suit as they looked over the pile of abandoned cars they'd been hiding behind. A group of at least 40 saviors was walking up the road towards the water treatment facility across from them. Down the line to their right, Ezekiel raised his hand and then gave the signal. They jumped up and opened fire, mowing down everyone in the road within seconds. They stepped out from behind the cars to survey the damage, and Ezekiel looked back at them with a wide smile.
Not one.
He winked at Carol, who smiled and shook her head.
We need to clear the building. I'm gonna go check it out.
I'll get your back.
They walked quickly across the road towards the building and slipped through a hole in the fence near one of the towers. As soon as they were through, the air around them exploded with the sounds of machine gun fire. They ducked instinctively and looked up towards the top of the building where the flash of a gun came through the window. They turned back to the field, and Talisa's heart dropped. No one was left standing. The bodies of the kingdom soldiers lay scattered on the ground, and Ezekiel was nowhere to be seen. Carol took a step back in their direction, but Talisa grabbed her arm.
No. If any of them are still alive, the best thing we can do for them is stop them from using that gun again.
Carol looked at her in fear for a moment, but then nodded. They cut carefully across the courtyard and slipped into a side door. They made their way into the stairwell and mercifully met no one as they climbed silently to the top floor. When they went through the stairwell door, they found themselves facing a long hall and heard voices at the end. Carol put a finger to her lips and nodded from Talisa to the end of the hall. They walked slowly down, keeping their guns ready, and slowly peeked around the door. The room beyond was a lab, with tables along one wall and a narrow walkway that led to a second room beyond. There were 3 men in the far room loading the machine gun back into a box as they argued. Suddenly a voice came from behind them, making them both jump.
Asshats! Get those guns and let's screw the hell off.
Talisa and Carol saw the shadow of someone about to turn the corner at the end of the hall, and they quickly dove into the room, hiding themselves between 2 of the tables.
We need some help in here.
What you need is to hurry your asses up.
The voice in the hall shot back as the footsteps came closer. Talisa looked over at Carol in fear. Carol looked around quickly and pointed at a locker across the walkway, and then at Talisa, and then at the drop ceiling and at herself. Talisa nodded and moved quickly, praying the men in the room were focused on the gun as she slipped across the walkway and slid inside the locker. She left the door cracked slightly and saw a quick glimpse of Carol's boots as she disappeared into the ceiling, just as Talisa heard the man from the hallway walk through the doorway.
What the hell? Those are the only 50 caliber buckets we have?
Got the rest in the truck already. This was just to tear them up. We've got at least...
The man's words were cut off by a hail of bullets from the ceiling that took out everyone in both rooms. After a few seconds, Talisa poked her head out and looked around to make sure they were dead. Carol dropped quietly from the ceiling and met her in the middle of the room.
Nice job. Now let's get that gun out of here before...
Hey!
A side door opened and both women ducked as more shots were fired at them. They ran for the doorway and down the hall, just getting around the corner before another man burst into the hall.
Let them go. Grab the guns. Shit's gotta be going down at HQ, and we gotta get these guns there now.
Carol looked over at Talisa, who nodded, and the 2 of them ran back down the hall towards the stairs.
What now?
Talisa whispered, as they looked carefully around one of the large water containers at the men walking across the compound.
We can't let them get away with those guns. If we do, it's all over.
You saying we're gonna make our stand, Annie Oakley?
Talisa shot her a smirk, and Carol gave her a half smile in return.
I'll go right. Draw their fire. You swing left. Let's get this done.
Carol took a deep breath and then ran out from behind the water tank, firing off a few rounds at the oncoming men. They whipped around and opened fire on her as she dived behind an old pickup. They sprayed the truck with bullets as she jumped up intermittently to fire back. In their distraction, Talisa ran around behind them, firing off 5 shots and cleanly taking them out. Carol stood up slowly and looked at her with a smile.
Gotta admit, that would have been a hell of a lot more complicated on my own.
Don't count your chickens, Missy.
Talisa felt the barrel of a handgun press against the back of her head, and she froze.
Well, look who it is. Hey there, honey.
Talisa recognized the voice of Ted, the savior who'd taunted her in Alexandria. He grabbed her hard by the arm and pushed her forward, keeping the gun pressed to her head, as another man stepped up beside him.
All right, come out here nice and slow. You took your shot. It's over now.
Carol raised her hands and stepped slowly out from behind the car.
Please, don't kill her.
Just come over here slowly.
I can tell you where the others are. They're hiding, waiting for the saviors to show up. I can tell you where. Just let her go.
You come over here nice and slow, and we'll talk about it.
Carol locked eyes with Talisa as she stepped forward, and Talisa saw her give the tiniest nod of her head. Simultaneously, Carol lunged to her left, hitting a blue button on the wall, and Talisa ducked, catching Ted in the stomach with her elbow as his gun went off, making her ears ring. The gate behind them slid open, and the dead began to file in. Ted and the other savior turned to take them out, giving Talisa a chance to roll to safety behind one of the crates. She saw Carol run across the courtyard and grab a rifle off of one of the dead saviors on the ground and open fire on the other 2 again. They both dove behind the truck where they'd loaded the guns. Carol stepped out and took out the last 2 walkers and then turned towards the truck. Talisa walked over to stand beside her.
We need to end this.
Carol nodded in agreement.
You were lying about your friends, huh?
The second savior called from behind the truck.
Yeah, I was. Now let's end this.
Sounds good. How about you two just walk away?
You're not going anywhere with those guns.
Nah, we are. We've got somewhere to be, honey.
We've got your buddy's ammo. How many bullets have you got left? 3, 4?
Why don't you come back here and find out?
Carol and Talisa shared a look, and Carol pointed towards the left side of the truck. Talisa nodded and took a step in that direction when all of a sudden they heard 2 gunshots to their right by the gate. They looked up, and Talisa's heart leapt as she saw Ezekiel and Jerry standing there. They were obviously injured but holding their own. They were losing ground, though, and the dead were surrounding them. Jerry yelled wildly as he sliced through one after the other with his axe. But it was obvious it was only a matter of time. From behind them, the truck's engine roared to life. Both women whipped around to see that in their distraction, the saviors had made it inside.
You get them. I've got the truck.
She charged toward the truck as it began to move. She jumped, just managing to grab onto the side and hauled herself up as it pulled out of the compound and flew down the road. She grabbed the side and braced her foot on the frame as she leaned around to try to take a shot at the driver. She whipped back and almost lost her grip as a bullet flew out the passenger side window, nearly clipping her. She clung tightly to the edge as they screeched around a turn, and her feet almost slipped off. She ducked as much as she could as another shot ripped through the covered bed, narrowly missing her temple.
You're up shit creek without a paddle now, honey.
She took one hand off the truck to attempt a shot back, but she missed. Suddenly, the loud rumble of a motorcycle came up the road behind them. She looked back to see Daryl flying up on the truck with Rick directly behind him in a military jeep. They saw her hanging off the side, and she saw the shock resonate on both their faces. Daryl leaned low over his handlebars and opened the throttle, coming up fast. He swerved right and then left to dodge the bullets Ted shot at him and got up beside the truck as Rick began shooting, drawing Ted's fire back on him.
Jump!
Daryl took one hand off the handlebars and reached up to her. She looked down in fear for a second, but then took a deep breath and leaped, grabbing his hand as he pulled her heavily onto the back of the bike. Her weight caused the back tire to wobble and skid slightly, and Daryl slowed down, allowing Rick to blast by them, still in pursuit. Both Talisa and Daryl flinched as Ted threw open the back of the truck and opened fire on Rick with the machine gun. They watched as Rick expertly maneuvered around the bullets, pulled up beside the truck, and launched himself into the bed and quickly killing Ted. He jumped through the passenger side door, and a few seconds later the truck swerved violently and then went flipping end over end off the side of the road. Daryl kicked the bike to life, and they raced to where it had landed down an embankment. Talisa hopped off as he came to a stop and looked down at the wreckage of the truck. They heard a low groan to their left and saw Rick slowly standing up from the tall grass. He walked over to them, blood trickling down from his forehead, and looked at Talisa with an amused expression.
You jumped on the side of the truck?
We got the guns, didn't we?
Rick chuckled, but Daryl shook his head, shooting a look in Rick's direction.
You look like shit.
Have you seen yourself?
Rick smiled again and sighed.
Let's go see if this asshole's still alive.
The three of them headed down the hill towards the wrecked truck. Rick stuck his head in the cab and then looked back at them.
He's dead.
Both Talisa and Daryl let out a sigh of relief.
What happened back at the outpost?
They got the jump on us. Carol and I were out of range when they brought out the machine gun, but the people from the kingdom?
All of them?
Ezekiel and Jerry got out, but they're hurt. Carol went to help them and I went after the truck.
Rick nodded and then turned back to the truck.
Let's get this stuff unloaded.
Daryl helped him pull the first of the crates out of the back. They popped it open and looked down to see it was full of dynamite. Daryl threw his hands in the air and turned back to Rick.
There it is. We know what we gotta do now. We blow open the sanctuary and let the walkers in. They'll surrender, and it'll be done. Hell, we could end this by sundown.
Daryl.
There are workers in there, and families.
We'll hit the south side of the building. Workers live in the north, they can be up the stairs before the walkers get to them.
Even if that's true, the others won't be. You're talking about feeding the officers to the herd. All of the officers, Daryl.
Yeah, I am. He made his damn bed. It's time to end this.
No.
Daryl turned back to Rick with an angry, disbelieving huff.
What if the workers don't get out, Daryl? There are people in there that aren't fighters. Doing this could change that. Make them pick up guns and stand with the saviors. And if the saviors get out, maybe all of them turn against us. We just lost the kingdom. We're not doing this.
No, you ain't doing this.
Daryl moved angrily towards the box, but Rick pushed him back hard.
Okay, I'm officially done.
Talisa raised her hands in annoyance and took a step back from them.
You two have whatever little manly display is about to happen. I'm out. I don't want to know. Rick, I'm going to go see if your Jeep is operational. If it is, I'm taking it, and I'm going to go try and find Carol, Jerry, and Ezekiel. Good luck.
Rick nodded to her without looking away from Daryl. She sighed and turned to walk back up the hill, and she heard one of them throw the first punch as she reached the edge of the road. She rolled her eyes and kept walking, finding the Jeep on the edge of an embankment about 100 feet back down the road. Thankfully, it was still upright, so she hopped in and turned the ignition. She carefully drove it back up onto the road and headed in the direction they'd just come. She slowed down as the outpost came into view on the horizon, as she thought through what her next move should be. Suddenly, she saw movement to her right, and Carol and Jerry stumbled out of the forest, carrying an almost catatonic Ezekiel between them.
Oh, thank God.
Talisa hopped out of the Jeep and helped them get Ezekiel in the back. Carol climbed in beside him, and Jerry jumped in the passenger seat beside her.
You're gonna have to tell me where I'm going. I don't know how to get back to the kingdom from here.
Just head straight for now.
She shot a look over at him.
You okay? Besides the obvious, I mean.
Jerry looked quickly over his shoulder to where Carol was supporting Ezekiel, who was staring off into space as if he wasn't aware of anything happening around him.
Shiva's gone. Wasted took her down when she was trying to protect him.
Oh my god. I'm so sorry.
Yeah,
Jerry looked pointedly down at the floor, taking a long, shaky breath. Talisa reached over and put a comforting hand on his arm. It took them another hour to finally get back to the gates of the kingdom. As they opened, allowing them entry, she saw a sea of worried faces looking back at them. Carol hopped out of the back and turned to help Ezekiel, but he pushed her away, limping heavily on his cane as he turned away from the crowd and walked into the auditorium without a word.
Your Majesty.
Someone from the crowd called, but he didn't turn or acknowledge them. All the eyes turned back to Carol and Jerry. Talisa knew that the families of all the men and women she'd been with not hours before were standing in front of her, wondering fearfully where their loved ones were. The pit in her stomach ached painfully as she saw the looks on Carol and Jerry's faces. In the end, it was Jerry who stepped forward.
the soldiers of the kingdom fought bravely. We stood against the saviors, and we were victorious, though it did not come without a cost. Take heart in knowing those you love gave their lives to make sure that the saviors will never oppress us again.
Someone in the crowd let out a wail of grief as the meaning of his words began to sink in. Sobs and strangled cries began to fill the air as the people of the kingdom came to the realization that their world had changed forever.
Hope this works for you.
Nabila stood in the doorway of the small studio apartment.
We turned these offices into studios about a year ago, when we were still growing our numbers. I know it's small, but it's got a balcony, so that's something.
It's perfect, Nabila. It's just me, so I don't need much space.
Nabila looked down at the key in her hand, rubbing her finger nervously across the top.
I wanted to thank you for helping Jerry get back here safe, and the king. I don't know how I can ever repay you for that.
There's nothing to repay. I was never going to do anything else.
I feel guilty. Everyone is devastated, and I'm just so happy Jerry's okay.
Hey.
Talisa stood and walked over to her.
You have nothing to feel guilty for. You're allowed to be happy that the person you love is alive. It doesn't mean you don't care about the others. But if it makes you feel any better, guilt in this situation is also a totally normal reaction. So normal, in fact, that they made a name for it. Survivor's guilt. It can affect the family of survivors just as much as actual survivors. Just try to be there for the others where you can, and it'll work itself out with time, okay?
Nabila nodded and looked up at her with a smile.
You're pretty good at that, you know? Making people feel better.
Well, I'm a psychiatrist. It's kind of my job description.
No kidding. We don't have one of those around here. Got a pretty great doctor, but no psychiatrist. With everything that just went down, you might find yourself pretty busy.
I mean, I'm always happy to talk with anyone who needs to. But I doubt people are going to be all that interested in pouring their hearts out to a stranger. Besides, I'm dealing with a lot of my own shit right now. I don't know how helpful I'd be.
Yeah. Jerry told me a little about what happened with you. Hope that's okay.
Of course. Pillow talk is pillow talk, right?
Nabila grinned in appreciation and took a step back inside, letting the door close behind her. Talisa sat down at the small two-person table just inside the door, and Nabila joined her.
So, he really joined up with Negan? The guy you were trying to rescue when you came here last time?
He really did. Trust me, I'm still having trouble wrapping my head around it. He was never the bravest guy, you know? And I was okay with that. I understood who he was, and I loved him anyway. But I really thought he was figuring it out, learning what kind of man he wanted to be, how to be someone he could be proud of at the end of the day. I don't know.
Talisa rubbed her hands across her face.
Maybe I just expected too much of him, you know? The first real conversation we ever had, he told me that he was a coward, who would always choose himself and his own safety first. Maybe this is on me.
She looked up at Nabila with a tired smile.
Sorry for dumping on you. I guess I've been bottling that up for a while now.
It's cool. I never mind listening if someone needs to talk. Maybe I should have been a psychiatrist.
Talisa smirked appreciatively.
Maybe you should have.
It stinks that he just ditched you like that, though. Especially after telling you he loved you and everything. I can't even imagine.
That's the craziest part. I don't think he did. When he stormed the gates with Negan, he asked me to come with him. I think he really thought I would. He looked so hurt when I sent him away.
Damn. So you're like a whole-ass Shakespearean tragedy, huh? Lovers torn apart by poor choices and things beyond your control. It'd almost be poetic if it wasn't so damn sad.
Talisa raised an eyebrow at her.
You know that was in no way remotely comforting, right?
Yeah, well, I'm not the psychiatrist.
Talisa laughed as Nabila stood up and walked back to the door.
Hey, Jerry said to ask if you wanted to have dinner with us tomorrow. I'm a hell of a cook. It's how I got him in the first place.
Talisa grinned appreciatively.
I would love to. Thanks for everything, Nabila. It means a lot.
Anytime. Have a good night.
2 days later, Talisa was walking down the main thoroughfare past the greenhouse when she saw Carol several feet down the road, outfitted in her armor and headed for the gates.
Hey!
Carol turned back, so Talisa jogged to catch up to her.
Where are you going?
Out to meet Rick.
What? Why? We've got a few more days and Ezekiel's not even back on his feet yet.
Ezekiel isn't getting back on his feet. I've been banging on his door for days. He won't even answer. He hasn't spoken to anyone, he hasn't done anything, and we don't have the luxury of waiting.
Well, let me get my stuff at least. I'll come with you. You shouldn't go out there alone.
No. You came here to get away. To take some time. I know it doesn't look like what you thought it would right now, but it's still important. I'll be fine on my own, and if anything big goes down, I'll make sure you get filled in, okay?
Okay, if you're really sure.
I am. I'll be back soon. I promise.
Talisa watched her go and then turned back towards the auditorium where Jerry stood watch outside the doors.
The king is not receiving visitors today.
And did the king happen to bar his doors to prevent entry?
Jerry looked up at her in mild amusement.
No, he did not.
Talisa walked around him to the auditorium door and pushed it open, looking back at him in surprise and shock.
Oh God, I somehow managed to slip past your expert defenses undetected. How in the world did that happen?
Jerry shook his head slightly and rolled his eyes as he turned back to his post, and Talisa went inside. She found Ezekiel sitting on stage in front of his throne. He was holding Shiva's chain and slowly letting the links slip between his fingers as he stared at them without really seeing.
Can you tell me about her? I never heard the story of how you found her.
I was a zookeeper. One day at the zoo, they emptied the moat around her enclosure. She was supposed to be inside, but she got out, fell into the pit, and cut her leg. Her howls.
He stopped and closed his eyes tightly against the pain.
I couldn't stand by and let her suffer, so I jumped in the enclosure. I bound her leg and saved her life. And from that moment, she was loyal to me. From that moment until her last. Just like the others, loyal until the moment I led them to their deaths.
Talisa reached tentatively up and placed a hand on his leg.
Ezekiel, we're at war. Every single one of those soldiers understood the risk when they walked out that gate. Do you really think if they'd known that would be the outcome, that they would have turned back?
No. And that's the problem in a nutshell. They would have followed me to their deaths because I played a part. Men and women died because a stupid, vain, idealistic fool decided to pretend he was something more than he was and put on an act. Pretend he could make the world the way he wanted it to be for so long he actually started to believe it was true. And then they believed it too. And look where we are now.
Why did you do it? You didn't need to be a king to lead them. Why create this whole world for them? What was the point?
I wanted them to believe that the world could still be a place where miraculous things were possible. And now I've come to see that the only thing I truly achieved was to give them false hope and dash their spirits that much further.
It's not. I understand where you are right now. I understand why you need to sit with this, and I'm not going to convince you otherwise. But all you have to do is step out that door and look around to see all the miraculous things you've achieved. Your people need you right now. They don't blame you. They blame the saviors because that's who they should blame. They need you to help them through this, to fight for them and be the leader they know you can be.
Ezekiel looked down at the chain in his hands again.
I can't.
Well, when you can again, we'll all be waiting.
She walked back outside, and Jerry turned slightly to look at her as she walked up beside him.
How'd it go?
He doesn't want to be the king anymore.
Yeah, I kind of got that when he screamed it at me in the woods, and then when he told me I didn't need to be his guard anymore.
But you're still here.
It's what I do. If I'm not a king's guard, I don't really know who I am, you know?
Talisa sighed and put a hand on his shoulder.
You told me, back in the woods, that Ezekiel had faith for everyone, even when they didn't have it for themselves. You remember?
Yeah, of course I do.
Well, now we need to have it for him, for a little while. We have to believe in him, until he's ready to believe in himself again. Think you can handle that?
Jerry looked over at her and a slow smile crept onto his face.
Hell yeah, he's earned it.
That night, Talisa stood on her balcony sipping a cup of hot tea. She pressed her hands to the mug and pulled her blanket tighter around her shoulders. She looked down at the road and saw Carol walking down it.
Hey, stranger, you weren't gone long.
Carol stopped and looked up at her with a sigh.
Henry followed me. Stupid, brave kid. I had to bring him back. I'm going out again tomorrow.
I talked with Ezekiel.
Yeah, I did too.
Carol put her hands in the pockets of her coat and kicked at the cobblestones in the street.
I don't know if he's gonna come back from this.
He will. It's just going to take some time.
We don't have time.
I know. Just don't give up on him, okay? He needs you. If anyone's going to get through to him, it's going to be you, and you know it.
Yeah, I do. Have a good night, Talisa.
You too, Carol.
As Carol walked away into the darkness, Talisa sighed and looked up into the sky. It was a clear, cold night, and it was dotted with hundreds of glittering stars. Her heart constricted painfully as her eyes were drawn to the brightest of them, twinkling in the same spot that it always had, ever since her father had pointed it out to her as a child. She turned away quickly and headed back inside, shutting the door behind her.
Eugene, I could use a little help. Can you come in?
Eugene looked to his right where Dr. Carson was standing in the infirmary. He'd only met him once at Hilltop, before Negan had taken him prisoner and brought him to the sanctuary, but on the whole, he seemed like a nice enough person, steady and even-keeled, and very good at his job. Eugene walked into the infirmary and was surprised to see the man lying in the bed.
Gabriel? They brought him in with Negan. As you know, they use the cover themselves in gore to get by the dead strategy. It got them to safety, but unfortunately for Gabriel, it also gave him a nasty infection, possibly more than one. It's attacking his organs, and it's only a matter of time until one fails. Just wish we had some damn meds.
I wish he hadn't assisted in the ill-conceived caper to trap us in here. But I find myself with a good number wishes as of late, and none of them bear much hope of coming to fruition. If wishes were horses and all that, I guess.
Dr. Carson looked over at him curiously.
So you think this is his fault?
It is. Not the whole of it. But he was a member of the campaign. I do get it, but I shan't forget it.
Would you sit with him?
Eugene looked at him in alarm.
How's that?
I'm going to head to the marketplace, see if they have those herbs down there, try some Eastern medicine on him. He shouldn't be left alone. And since he's your friend...
Traveling companion.
Carson gave an exasperated sigh.
Do you want him to die?
No.
Good, then I'll be back soon.
Dr. Carson walked out of the room before Eugene could protest any further. He stood there awkwardly, trying to decide what to do next. In the end, he walked hesitantly over and sat down in the chair next to the bed, watching Gabriel sleep. It was the closest he'd been to someone from Alexandria in a week, to someone who knew her. Gabriel coughed slightly, and his eyes slid open. He looked around blearily for a second, until his gaze landed on Eugene, and the hint of a smile played at his lips.
You look worse than me.
I don't appreciate that, because you happen to look like a potato in shit casserole.
Gabriel let out a small chuckle that immediately turned into a cough. He reached weakly out for the glass of water on his bedside table, and after watching him struggle for a few seconds, Eugene sighed and picked it up, assisting him in taking a drink. Gabriel lay back against his pillow and looked over at him.
Are you going to help me get Dr. Carson out of here?
Given that this building is currently surrounded by a Wilkes-Barre of walkers, I don't see an escape attempt without put into use. The same flawed technique of innards which landed you in your status quo piss-poor condition.
Eugene looked down at his hands, running a thumb over the bruises and small cuts scattered across his knuckles.
What you may have forgotten in your request is that I am a small person who does not stick his neck out for anyone but himself. I stick firmly within my lane without any need for signal, hand or automatic.
Eugene, you and I both know that's not true. I was there. I know. I know there are things you care about more than yourself, people. You care about.
Cared. And the only thing said care afforded me in the end was fear, danger, and ultimately a broken heart. So you tell me, how is that in any way beneficial to me in the long run?
You made the wrong choice. You let fear and uncertainty inform your decisions. Believe me, I understand that, but take it from someone who has walked that path. It's never too late to put it right, Eugene. It's never too late to do the right thing.
And what exactly is said definition on that? Can't say I ever sussed it out. Right for some can be downright horrific for others, and knowing that has kept me vertical when so many others have gone horizontal.
It requires faith, trusting yourself, believing that God is inside of you, guiding you, and knowing He has a plan for us all. Is that so hard?
Eugene looked at him blankly.
It's absurd.
All right, then forget God for a minute.
Gabriel smirked at the expression of surprise on Eugene's face.
Yeah, I know. But even priests have to take a different tack once in a while.
He sighed and closed his eyes for a moment before looking back at Eugene, who nervously met his gaze.
Everyone has something inside them, the voice that guides them, that holds them together when everything feels like it's falling apart. For me, it's my faith that God has a plan. What is it for you?
The empty hole that had been growing in Eugene's core ached painfully.
I don't know.
Gabriel gave him a sympathetic look.
I think you do. I think you knew from the moment you found it. I think you found the man you want to be when we got to Alexandria, and I think you've been fighting against it from the second you walked into this building. She's still with you, Eugene. I know it doesn't feel like it, but love like that, it doesn't just go away. I know you hear her voice, even now. So maybe when the time comes and you're faced with another decision, you'll have the courage to get that man back and to know what the right thing is.
Eugene looked down at his hands again, not wanting to speak. Anger and shame bubbled inside him in equal parts. and he realized the only thing he truly wanted in that moment was to be anywhere except where he was. He was considering simply leaving Gabriel alone, despite Dr. Carson's warnings about his condition, when the doctor himself walked back into the room.
Hey, he's awake. Couldn't get any herbs, but I was able to scrounge up a little aspirin. That should at least take the edge off for you, Gabriel. Thanks for sitting with him, Eugene.
No thanks necessary.
Eugene stood and quickly exited the room. He walked back down the corridor to his own room, but he had no sooner shut the door when someone knocked on it again. He turned to see one of Negan's wives, Tanya, standing in the doorway.
Hello?
You said a week, and it's been a week.
He stared blankly at her in confusion.
Our deal, my boombox, did you fix it?
Are you serious? Our neck is in the noose of the deceased, and it is tightening with every tick-tock.
So, you're saying it's not ready?
No, it's not ready. Are you seriously not distressed by our current situation? We're trapped.
Tanya gave a non-committal shrug.
I was already trapped here. You've got until tomorrow, Eugene. Then we renegotiate.
Wait.
She turned slowly in the doorway to look back at him.
The second bottle of vino. Would it be possible to take possession of it despite the delivery delinquency?
The deal was 1 bottle up front, 1 bottle after you fix it.
Please. I need it.
What? Are you making it into jet fuel or something?
If you must know, I have taken to throwing 8 fluid ounces down my gullet most PMs as a necessary requirement to catching some much-needed Z's. Ergo, I need the giggle juice.
It doesn't help, though, does it? It might put you to sleep, but it doesn't change how you feel when you wake up alone and remember.
What are you talking?
Dwight told me. About what you gave up? I bet you wake up in the dark and reach for her every night before you remember, don't you? And I'm betting you're finally starting to see that being safe isn't enough. That facing uncertainty with someone you love is a way better deal than facing the rest of your life safe and sound and completely alone.
Why are you saying this to me? What possible action have I taken against you to earn such a vicious diatribe?
It's not what you did, Eugene. It's what you didn't. Me and Frankie came to you, asked you for help. You could have changed this place, made it better. But you took care of you, and now you've got to live with that. I hope this helps.
She pulled a bottle of wine from her bag and pushed it against his chest roughly.
But it won't.
When I Fall is a work of fiction based on AMC's The Walking Dead. Any characters not created by the author are the property of said company. The story will continue in the next chapter.